You know that kind of pain that doesn't just sit in your body, but seeps into your very blood? The kind of pain that never lets go? I carried it with me for 7 long years. It started as a weight in my back, climbed up my spine, and settled in my throat every single time I heard that key turn in the door at 6 in the evening. And with that sound always came fear, a fear so deep that even now, at 71 years old, it jolts me awake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. Good morning, everyone. My name is Evelyn Hart, though most folks in Brookhaven, Kentucky, just call me Grandma Evelyn. Around here, I'm known for my fudge, pralines, and peanut brittle, the kind of sweets that kids line up for at the farmer's market. I've had my little stand in town square for over 40 years. It's almost ironic, isn't it, that the little girl who once didn't know if she lived to see the next day ended up making candy that brings joy to so many. I was born in 1954 in a pale yellow house at the end of Maple Lane, tucked away in the poorer side of town. It was the kind of place where everyone thought they knew their neighbours, but behind closed doors, secrets thrived, and our yellow house, with its windows always shut tight, hid the darkest ones. My father, Richard, worked as a county inspector. In public, he was respected, a man with a firm handshake, a deep voice, a regular at church, always seated in the front pew singing louder than anyone else. Neighbours called him a man of principle, a model husband and father. My mother, Helen, was an elementary school teacher. Her hair was always pulled into a tight bun, her dresses neat, her nails short. She carried herself with rigid posture, and just one glance over her glasses could silence a rowdy classroom. At home, though, she was quiet, submissive, more like my father's shadow than his partner. It was just the 3 of us in that yellow house. My mother had carried other children, but none survived. I was the only one. God's miracle, she used to say. But sometimes I wondered if the true miracle would have been not surviving at all. It might have spared me from what was to come. The house itself was modest but spotless. My mother filled it with the scent of polish, crochet doilies covering every surface, and in the backyard stood apple trees, a cherry tree, and a big laundry tub where I splashed around on summer days. For a time it felt like my own little heaven. Until I turned 8. I remember the exact day, my birthday. I got a blue dress with white polka dots and a rag doll my mother had stitched in secret. I was so happy, too happy to notice the strange look in my father's eyes at lunch, a look I would learn to recognise all too well. That night my mother went to her usual prayer meeting at church, and I was left alone with him. Normally he'd send me to bed early while he stayed up listening to the radio, but this time was different. "Come here, Evelyn," he called from the kitchen. I went, clutching my new doll. He stood by the sink, glaring. "Look at this, dirty. Your mother didn't wash it properly." To me, the sink looked clean, but disagreeing wasn't an option. "I'll tell Mom when she gets back," I whispered. "No, you're going to wash it, now." I tried to explain that I was too small, that the cold water stung my hands in the Kentucky winter, but it didn't matter. I climbed up on a stool and scrubbed as best as I could, spilling water, leaving soap on dishes. Just childish mistakes. That's when it began. "See why your mother never wanted more children, because you're worthless." The words cut deeper than any slap. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept scrubbing. "You can't even do this right. Useless. Do you know what happens to useless girls? They get punished." He picked up the broom, leaning against the wall. I braced myself for the sting on my legs. He'd done it before, but this time was different. "Take off your clothes." I froze. My arms tightened around my doll. "Dad, it's cold. Take them off." His voice thundered so loud I dropped the doll. My hands shook as I pulled off my birthday dress. I stood there, small and trembling, trying to cover myself. Everything changed in that moment. I won't describe what followed, not because I carry shame, but because there are children watching this. I'll just say this: what happened should never happen to a child. The pain was unbearable, the kind that makes you wonder if you'll survive the night. When it was over, I was left broken, and the threat came clear. If you ever tell anyone, I'll kill you, and your mother too. That night I cleaned the kitchen floor while he turned on the radio as if nothing had happened. I wanted to tell my mother when she returned. She came into my room, saw me awake. "What's wrong, honey? Can't sleep?" I opened my mouth, but fear sealed the words. I just shook my head. "Then go to bed. You have school tomorrow." She closed the door, and with that door something inside me closed too. Trust, safety, childhood itself. I thought it was a one-time punishment, but I was wrong. In the weeks that followed, every excuse was enough. A messy room, muddy clothes, a bad grade. "Get the broom," he'd say. And I obeyed. What else could an 8-year-old do against a grown man? The worst moment came when I realised my mother knew, or at least suspected. One night I came home with mud on my skirt. My father's rage boiled over. "To your room," he ordered. I obeyed, trembling. He followed, broom in hand. But this time the door didn't shut completely. Through the crack I saw her, my mother, watching. Our eyes met. She saw my fear, my silent plea. And do you know what she did? Nothing. She closed the door, slowly, silently, leaving me there to face the darkness alone. That was the night I learned the deepest betrayal. It wasn't just him, it was her too. And for the first time I cried not only from pain, but from the crushing truth that I was utterly alone. The abuse didn't stop. It grew, like a storm that never ends, only gets louder, heavier, more violent. At first, my father waited for my mother to leave the house, but eventually, he didn't need to anymore. He did it right in front of her, and she watched, sometimes with her eyes lowered, sometimes with a strange glimmer in them, but never once did she step in. Never once did she protect me. I was 10 years old when I first tried to resist. By then I was taller, stronger, at least I thought so. One evening, when he came toward me with that broom, I pushed him and ran. I made it all the way to the front door. My hand was on the knob. I thought I was free. But my mother was there, blocking the way. "Where do you think you're going, Evelyn?" "Mum, please, let me out." "Go back. Your father isn't finished." And just like that, she pushed me back toward him, like someone returning a borrowed toy. As I grew older, changes in my body only made everything worse. My chest, my hips, my first period. I tried to hide it, terrified of what it would mean. And I was right to be afraid. My father became obsessed with the idea that I might get pregnant. "If you ever put a bastard in this world," he hissed, "I'll kill you myself. I'll throw you in the river, and no one will ever find you." Still, the punishments continued. He just found new ways, ways that left fewer marks, ways that were harder to see. At school, I became the strange girl, quiet, withdrawn, always in long sleeves even in the summer heat. I sat in the back row, never played at recess, never smiled. My grades plummeted. I couldn't concentrate. How can you think about fractions when your whole body aches? How can you memorize history when all you can hear in your head is the sound of the front door opening at 6 p.m? The teachers noticed. They whispered. They looked concerned. But in those days, people lived by one rule. Family matters are private matters. No one dared to step in. No one except Mrs. Linda, my history teacher. She was short, with curly hair always tied back and big glasses that slid down her nose. She didn't look at me with pity or disgust. She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years, understanding. One afternoon she asked me to stay after class. "Evelyn, is everything okay at home?" That simple question nearly broke me. It had been so long since anyone had cared enough to ask. My instinct was to lie, as I always did, but instead tears spilled over. "No," I whispered, "nothing is okay." I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. The fear was still stronger than the pain. fear of what he'd do if he found out I'd spoken, fear that no one would believe me over two respected adults. But she didn't push. She just said, "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." And for the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel completely alone. By then, I was 13, 5 years of daily torment, 5 years of having my childhood stolen, my body broken, my soul crushed, 5 years of looking at my mother and seeing not a protector, but an accomplice. And then things got worse. The yellow house became my prison. My father started locking the doors when he left. The broom, always leaning in the same corner of the kitchen, loomed over me like a constant shadow. I began having nightmares, waking up screaming, drenched in sweat. Sometimes I wet the bed, and that only gave him more reason to punish me. At school, I was a ghost, but inside, something was changing. A spark. At first, it was just anger. Anger at the injustice, the pain, the betrayal. But anger turned into something stronger. Courage. Because I realized one truth. If I didn't speak up, I wouldn't survive. It happened on an ordinary Wednesday. The sky was blue, the air heavy with heat. The night before, I had been punished for dropping a glass in the kitchen. I could barely sit in my chair at school. Mrs. Linder noticed. She noticed the way I shifted, the way I held back tears. When the bell rang, she asked me to stay again. This time, she locked the door. "Evelyn, what's happening in your home?" I stared at the floor. "Evelyn, look at me." I looked, and in her eyes I saw something I had never seen in my mother's, genuine compassion. "No one deserves to suffer," she said softly. "No one, especially not a child. If someone is hurting you, you can tell me. I will help you." And after 5 years of silence, the words came pouring out. The threats, the fear, the punishments, the mother who watched, everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she had tears in her eyes, and then she said the 3 most important words I'd ever heard in my life. "I believe you." And for the first time in years, I felt something new inside my chest, something I barely recognized. Hope. But if hope was a light, betrayal was still the shadow hanging over me. Do you know what betrayal really is? It's not just a husband cheating on a wife. Betrayal is when the person who should love and protect you the most chooses not to. That's what my mother, Helen Hart, did to me. She taught hundreds of children in Riverdale how to read, how to write. She prayed the rosary every night, but in our yellow house she turned her back while her only child was being destroyed. At first I tried to convince myself she didn't know. How could she not notice her daughter limping, or the blood on the sheets? How could she see me flinch when anyone raised their voice and not ask why? But I knew the truth, because one night when I was 10, I looked at her through the crack of the bedroom door. Our eyes met, and she closed the door. That was the night all my excuses for her died. She knew. She had always known. And in the years that followed, she did more than just know. She participated, not in the abuse itself, but in everything around it. She prepared me for it. She covered it up. She called it discipline, as if what he was doing was some kind of lesson. One afternoon, when I came home late from school, I begged her. I dropped my backpack, trembling. "Mum, please, please don't let him. Please help me." She didn't look at me with love. She looked at me with irritation. "Help? You think you deserve help? If you were a good daughter, he wouldn't need to correct you." That was the word she used. Correct. And then she slapped me. For the first time. "Shut up. He's your father. He has the right. And you provoke him. With your body. With your disobedience." Those words cut deeper than anything he had ever done to me, because they came from her. From that day on, she wasn't just silent, she was complicit. She started preparing everything in advance, telling me to wash up, making sure I looked presentable before he came. Afterward, she'd strip the bed, scrub the sheets, patch up whatever marks couldn't be hidden under my clothes. It felt like there were two predators in that house now, not just one. I remember once when I got really sick, burning fever, aching everywhere, the kind of illness that leaves you barely able to move. For a brief moment I thought maybe that would give me peace. She even brought me tea, laid a damp cloth on my forehead. For a second I felt the care every child deserves, but then he entered the room. The mattress sank under his weight. I opened my eyes, silently begging her, just this once, to protect me. She walked out and shut the door behind her. That night things were worse. He said he was driving the sickness out of me, that it was for my own good. By morning my fever was higher, my body shaking. I could hear her scolding him outside the door, not because she cared about me, but because she feared what the neighbours would think if I didn't survive. To her, I wasn't a daughter. I was a risk, a potential scandal. I missed school for a week. When the teacher asked why, she wrote a neat little note. Mary has the flu. She'll be back soon, signed as if it were official. When I returned, thinner and paler than before, Mrs. Linda gave me a look. She sensed something wasn't right, but I still couldn't speak. Not yet. At 11, I tried to run away. I packed a grocery bag with a change of clothes, a toothbrush, my ragged old doll. I waited until they were asleep and tried the window. Nailed shut. The front door locked. The key was in their room. The kitchen. Same. The house wasn't a home. It was a cage. No one could get in. I couldn't get out. I sat on the kitchen floor, crying silently, the useless bag in my lap. That's when I noticed it in the corner. The broom. The symbol of everything. For the first time I felt rage, hot, consuming rage. I wanted to smash it, burn it, bury it, just to have one night without it. But the second I touched it, footsteps echoed behind me. "What are you doing?" His voice. He stood in the doorway, dishevelled, eyes bloodshot. He had come for water, and there I was, clutching the broom. What followed was worse than anything before, not just the broom, but his fists, the belt. I blacked out. When I woke, I was sprawled on the cold kitchen floor, one eye swollen shut. My mother found me like that. She didn't help. She sighed and said, "See what you cause. Look what you make him do." Always the blame on me, as if I had chosen any of it. The excuses multiplied. At school they said I'd fallen down stairs, stairs that didn't even exist in our one-story house. Nobody questioned it. My mother's complicity grew bolder. She started provoking him deliberately, giving him reasons. "Mary needs correction, James," she'd say. Correction. That was their word, their code. And slowly I realised she liked it. Maybe not the acts themselves, but the power. Watching me be punished for things I hadn't done. Watching me break while she sat untouched. One afternoon she dressed me up, saying we were going to her friend Margaret's for dinner. For the first time in months I felt hope. A night away, a night of peace. But he came home early, with one sentence, "No, I need you both here." My hope vanished. She didn't argue, just took off her hat, went back to cooking as if nothing had mattered. That night I cried into my pillow, not from the pain, but from betrayal. She would always choose him, always. By 12 I had stopped hoping altogether. I moved like a shadow. School, home, sleep, repeat. My teachers noticed, of course. I hardly spoke, barely ate. Once my gym teacher called her in because I refused to change clothes. I didn't want anyone to see the bruises. He thought it was strange. I ended up crying in the corner. From the doorway I overheard her speaking to the staff. Calm, polished, every detail rehearsed. Mary is difficult. She makes up stories, craves attention. She trips, falls. That's why she's always bruised. She twisted reality until even adults began to doubt their own eyes. On the way home she hissed at me. "Are you happy now? You almost embarrassed me in front of everyone." That night, for the first time, she didn't just ignore it. She sat in the corner, watching while he punished me. Her eyes locked on mine, a silent warning. This is what happens when you try to tell. By then, the physical pain was nothing. What crushed me was the realization that there would never be rescue. The two of them were united, an unbreakable wall. I stopped trying, stopped crying, learned to disappear inside myself, to leave my body when things happened, to pretend I was someone else, somewhere else. By 13, my body had changed. The abuse escalated, now laced with a new threat, pregnancy. He had his ways of preventing it, cruel and degrading. She even checked my clothes each month, making sure my cycle came. "If you get pregnant, I'll throw you out on the street," she warned, and I believed her. At 13, Mary finally felt the crushing weight of her silence. Every bruise, every insult, every night spent trembling in her own home had stacked up inside her like bricks in a prison wall. She knew she couldn't carry it alone anymore. One afternoon, she walked into Mrs. Linda's classroom with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Linda had always been more than a teacher to her. She was the only adult who ever truly looked at Mary as if she mattered. That day, Mary's voice broke the silence she had carried for years. "My father hurts me," she whispered, her throat tight, words tasting like rust and salt. "And my mother, she knows, she lets it happen, she does nothing." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. For a moment, Mary thought she might collapse under the weight of her own confession. But Mrs. Linda didn't flinch. She reached across the desk, her eyes burning with both sorrow and fury. "I believe you," she said, each word firm, unshakable. Something inside Mary cracked open. The fear, the shame. It didn't vanish, but for the first time, she wasn't alone in it. Mrs. Linda wrapped her arms around her, holding her as if trying to shield her from years of pain she should never have endured. That embrace became the turning point. Together they called Child Protective Services. As Mary sat there clutching Linda's hand, she realized the system might finally see her, hear her, and protect her. For the first time in her 13 years of life, hope felt real. Who would ever believe a troubled teenager over two seemingly respectable adults? What kind of proof could there be? The bruises. That's what we needed to document. Mrs. Linda hesitated, her eyes flickering as though she was wrestling with a decision that had weighed on her for years. "Mary," she said softly, "there's something I've never told many people." My breath caught. Despite the fear tightening in my chest, curiosity pushed me to listen. "When I was about your age, something similar happened to me. It wasn't my father. It was my stepfather. And my mother, just like yours, looked away. She pretended not to see." My eyes widened. Mrs. Linda, the most respected teacher in the school, the woman with her perfect lessons, her impeccable reputation, her polished life. How did you get out?" I whispered. She gave me a sad smile. "I didn't, not the right way. I ran away. I lived on the streets for a while. I was cold, hungry. Eventually, a family let me sleep in their shed in exchange for chores. I studied in secret, got my GED, became a teacher, but I never reported him. I never saw justice done. My stepfather died years later without ever facing consequences, and my mother, she lived the rest of her life pretending none of it ever happened. To this day, she avoids me. I'm a living reminder of her failure." I sat in stunned silence. My strong, untouchable teacher, she had been a victim too. She had suffered and survived, and now she was here, fighting for me. "That's why you noticed," I said slowly. She nodded. "Yes, I recognized the signs, the empty stare, the excuses for bruises, the constant fear. I saw myself in you, and I won't let you go through what I did. You won't run away without protection. We'll do this the right way." The right way. Did such a thing even exist for someone like me? "I have a friend," she continued, adjusting her glasses. "A lawyer who handles abuse cases. I'll speak with him today, but we need evidence, Mary, solid, undeniable evidence." "I can show the bruises," I offered quickly. I have marks everywhere." She nodded grimly. "That helps, but the strongest case is if we catch them in the act, something they can't deny." The thought chilled me to my bones. To be caught in the act meant enduring it again. One more night of horror, one more night with the broom. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I know," she said gently. "And if you can't, we'll find another way. But think about it, Mary. This could be the only chance to end it, for good. Not just for you, but for any other child they might hurt after you." Other children. The thought twisted my stomach. What if they adopted another girl after I left? What if she endured the same? "What do I need to do?" I asked, my voice trembling. She explained the plan, risky, terrifying, but possible. "Are you sure?" she asked. "This won't be easy. Going through it one last time." "If it's the last time," I interrupted, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice, "then it's worth it. If this ends everything, I can survive one more night." Mrs. Linder squeezed my hand. Simple, but it was the first true gesture of care I had felt in years. "You're so brave, Mary, braver than I ever was." I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified, but for the first time I also felt hopeful. I had a plan. I had an ally. I had a chance. That night, everything looked ordinary on the surface. I did my homework, helped in the kitchen, ate dinner while my parents talked about school meetings and county work projects like we were a normal family. The hypocrisy made me sick. How could they pretend? How could they act like nothing was wrong when at night he came into my room with a broom? After dinner, I went to bed as instructed, my heart racing, palms sweating. Would this really work? Would this really be my last night in hell? At 10 p.m, I heard the familiar footsteps, the creak of the door, the scrape of wood against the wall. "Get up," his voice commanded, cold, certain, expecting obedience. I obeyed, as always. But this time, as I glanced at the window, the night sky, the freedom beyond it, I knew. Tonight was different. Tonight was the end. The next 2 hours were hell, just as they had always been. But this time, every second of pain had a purpose. Every tear was a step closer to freedom. And when it was finally over, when he walked out of the room satisfied, I didn't feel broken. I felt victorious, because I knew this was the last time he touched me, the last time that broom would hurt me, the last time I would be trapped in that nightmare. The next morning, I carried more than books in my backpack. I carried evidence, proof, the weapon that could finally shatter my chains. Mrs. Linder was waiting at the school gates. Her eyes mirrored the same determination that burned inside me. We were no longer just teacher and student. We were comrades in a war the world pretended didn't exist. "Are you ready?" she asked. I nodded, inhaling deeply. A world without brooms, without pain, without betrayal stretched ahead. I was ready, more than ready. Together we walked into the school, not toward another ordinary day, but toward the freedom I had dreamed of for so long. Hell wasn't waiting after death. Hell was here, in life. But that morning I was finally ready to slam its doors shut. On the way home, everything felt different. The same streets, the same neighbours waving, but I saw them with new eyes. Did they know? Did they suspect? Or did they really believe we were just another happy family? When I walked in, my mother was at the kitchen table grading papers. She glanced at me over her glasses. "Get ready. Your father's coming home early today." "We're expecting visitors from the capital." Visitors? That was rare. For a moment, panic set in. Would it ruin the plan? But then I realised, maybe it was better. With outsiders in the house, they couldn't touch me. At least for one night, I'd be safe. I dressed as ordered. The blue dress reserved for special occasions, the only one I had besides my school uniform. I washed my face, combed my hair. In the mirror, the same girl looked back at me, but her eyes were different now. There was a spark, the spark of someone who knows freedom is close. At 6 o'clock, my father arrived with the guests, a man in a suit and an elegant woman, people from the capital, just as my mother had said. "This is Mary," my father introduced, his hand gripping my shoulder too hard. A silent warning. Behave. "Our daughter." "What a beautiful young lady," the woman smiled. "How old are you, dear?" 13, I answered politely. "Ah, the best age, almost a young woman." If she only knew, if she could imagine that this young woman had already lived through horrors most adults couldn't endure. Dinner was a perfect performance. My mother played the gracious hostess. My father told stories about local politics. The couple laughed, praised the food. On the surface, it was the picture of a happy family. Inside, I wanted to scream. At one point, I caught the man watching me, but not with that hungry, predatory gaze I knew too well. His look was different, curious, thoughtful, as if piecing together a puzzle. "And you, Mary, do you like school?" The question startled me. No one ever asked about my thoughts or feelings. "Yes, sir, I like studying." "Oh, what's your favourite subject?" "History," I replied instantly. "Mrs. Linda's class, the only place I ever felt safe." "Ah, history, essential for understanding the present, for shaping the future." I nodded awkwardly, unpractised in normal conversation. "She's going to be a teacher like her mother," my father cut in, steering the talk away from me. "We've already set her on that path. Isn't that right, daughter?" I lowered my eyes. "Yes, father." We had never once spoken about my future. How could we? In their world, I didn't have one. I wasn't a person. I was property. After dinner, I was sent to my room. Relieved, I sat on the bed, staring at the starry sky through the window. Soon, maybe, I'd be looking at those same stars from a different place. A place without fear. Half asleep, I heard pounding at the front door. Raised voices. "What does this mean?" my father shouted. "You can't just enter my house like this." "We have a warrant, Mr. Payne," came the firm, unfamiliar reply. My heart stopped. It was happening. The plan had worked. They were here. Chaos erupted. Shouting, doors slamming, my mother crying. Then a knock at my door. "Mary, are you in there?" A woman's voice, calm, steady. "Yes," I whispered, trembling. "Open the door, please." "We're from Child Protective Services. We're here to help you." I opened the door with shaking hands. A middle-aged woman stood there, grey hair, kind eyes, 2 police officers behind her. "Hello, Mary. I'm Dr. Helen. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to stay here anymore." Tears flooded my face, not from fear, but relief, liberation. "Can you pack some things, whatever you'd like to take?" I didn't own much. A few clothes, a school notebook, my old rag doll. It all fit into one small bag. "That's it?" Dr. Helen asked gently. "That's all I need," I said honestly. In the living room, the scene was surreal. My father, always so powerful, so feared, was in handcuffs. My mother sat weeping in the corner. The visiting couple stood by with grim expressions. Not visitors at all. Social workers. Undercover. When my parents saw me, their reactions split. My mother turned away, unable to face me. My father's eyes burned with hate. "You liar! Ungrateful! After all we did—" "Be quiet, sir," the officer cut him off. "You're in enough trouble already." As Dr. Helen guided me out, I glanced at the kitchen. The broom was gone, collected as evidence. That corner, once my torture chamber, was finally empty. At the door, I locked eyes with my mother one last time. No regret, no love, only fear. Fear of scandal, fear of shame. Even at the end, her concern was never for me. I climbed into the official car without looking back. The yellow house, my prison, shrinking in the rearview mirror until it disappeared. Along with it, a lifetime of pain. In that car, surrounded by strangers who treated me with more kindness than my own family ever had, I breathed deeply. For the first time, it felt like I was truly breathing. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To the hospital first. Dr. Helen explained, then a safe place, a shelter, until we can arrange something permanent. Hospital, shelter. Words that should have frightened me, but instead they sounded like music. Any place was better than the yellow house. And my parents? Your father will remain in custody. Your mother's case will depend on the investigation and your testimony. My testimony. For the first time my words would matter. There's someone I want to see, I said softly. My teacher, Mrs. Linda. Dr. Helen smiled. Yes, we know her. She's waiting at the hospital. I smiled too, for the first time in years. She had kept her promise. She had helped me escape the way she never could for herself. At the hospital, the doctors were respectful, careful. They documented every injury, every scar. You are very strong, Mary, one told me, stronger than most adults I know. I didn't feel strong. I felt small, fragile, but for the first time in years I felt safe. Then I saw her, Mrs. Linda, tired, glasses slipping down her nose, but smiling with relief. You did it! I ran to her and hugged her tight, something I had never dared before. No, Mary. We did it. You carried the hardest burden. 2 survivors, 2 generations, united not only by pain, but by hope. Later, over a snack, she explained how it had all happened so quickly, how she had taken the broom and photos straight to her lawyer friend, how they went to court, and a sympathetic judge immediately ordered my father's arrest, how my mother was forced out of the home until her role was investigated, and the couple at dinner, social workers undercover, invited by my father for a county project. A coincidence that turned out to be perfect timing. That was why the man had looked at me the way he did, not with hunger, but with recognition. He had seen the truth, and finally, so had everyone else. He wasn't judging me. He was evaluating me, searching my face for signs of fear, of pain, of what I had endured. And now, what will happen to me? I asked. For now, you'll go to a shelter, Dr. Helen explained, but she hesitated, as if deciding whether to continue. I also spoke with the judge. I asked for authorization to become your temporary guardian, if you want that, of course. I was speechless. Live with Mrs. Linda? It was more than I had dared to dream. You would do that for me? I would do it with you, Mary, she answered. It's not charity, it's justice. It's giving you the chance I never had when I was your age. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. I had no tears left anyway. I was empty and full at the same time, empty of fear, full of possibility. I want that, I whispered, more than anything. She smiled, that gentle smile that had given me hope from the very beginning. Then we'll ask the judge. I'm certain she'll consider it. That night I slept in a simple shelter dormitory, several beds, other girls like me, but it was clean. It was safe, and for the first time in years I slept without fear. When sunlight streamed through the window the next morning, I was disoriented. Where was I? Why wasn't I in the dark room of the yellow house? And then I remembered. I was free. The nightmare was over. Later that day, I testified formally at the Child Protection Unit. It was excruciating, retelling everything once more to strangers, reliving the broom, the nights, my mother's silence. But I told it all. When I finished, a detective with kind fatherly eyes leaned forward. Your testimony will help convict them, Mary, but more importantly, it will help save other children. Your courage is opening doors that were locked for too long. I didn't feel courageous. I just felt relieved to finally be away, to finally be heard. That afternoon, Dr. Helen returned to the shelter, this time with Mrs. Linda, and a woman I soon learned was the judge. Mary, the judge said after introductions, I have reviewed your case with urgency. Given the seriousness of the situation, I have granted temporary custody to Mrs. Linda. If you agree, of course. I looked at Mrs. Linda. She smiled nervously, but her eyes shone with hope. She truly wanted me, to take care of me, to be my family. I agree, I said, my voice trembling. More than agree. The judge exhaled with relief. Good, you may leave today. The process will continue. Hearings, testimonies, your parents' right to defence, but you don't ever have to see them again, unless you choose to. I don't want to, I said firmly. Then let's go home, Mrs. Linda whispered. Home. The word had a new meaning now. No longer fear, no longer prison. It meant a chance. I packed my few belongings, said goodbye to the other girls. One of them, older, hugged me and whispered, "Don't forget about us." I won't, I promised. How could I? They were part of my story now. On the ride to Mrs. Linda's house, the world outside looked different, brighter, more alive. "Are you ready for a new life, Mary?" she asked from the driver's seat. I breathed deeply. A life without brooms, without screams in the night, without betrayal. A life with school, with dreams, with a future. I've never been more ready, I said, and so my new journey began. The path wasn't easy. Healing takes time. But at least now there was a path leading me out of hell, toward the light. For the first time in my life, I had hope. If you asked me what freedom smells like, I'd say the earth after rain. That was the scent that filled my first morning at Mrs. Linda's house, the smell of a new beginning. Her home wasn't large or luxurious. Just a modest 2-story house with 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a kitchen, and a backyard full of plants. But it was clean, bright, full of books, and most importantly, free of monsters. The first days were strange. I didn't know how to behave. I kept asking for permission to drink water, to use the bathroom, to sit down. On the second day, I dropped a glass during lunch. It shattered on the floor. Instantly I froze, waiting for the broom, for the screams. But none of that came. Only Mrs. Linda's calm voice. "Don't worry, dear. Glasses break. It's normal." I cried that day, not because of the glass, but because of the normality. Because for once I was just a girl who broke something, not a criminal who deserved punishment. Weeks passed. Slowly I learned to live without fear, to understand that not every adult wants to hurt you, that not every mother betrays, that not every father abuses. The first night I slept without nightmares came nearly a month after my escape. I dreamed of flowers. When I told Mrs. Linda, she smiled. "That's how children are supposed to sleep, Mary. It's your right." A right I never knew I had. Returning to school was difficult. In a small town everyone knew. Some looked at me with pity, others with morbid curiosity, and some even with anger, as if I had ruined my parents' lives, not the other way around. But there were also silent supporters, a hand on my shoulder, a candy on my desk, a seat saved at recess. Every class, every meal without fear, every night of rest was stitching me back together. 6 months later, justice came. My father was sentenced to 15 years, my mother to 8 as an accomplice. One of the first child abuse cases with such severe penalties in the region. A milestone. A victory. That same day, I learned 3 other girls had reported their families. "Your courage gave them courage," Dr. Helen told me. At 14, I began therapy. Uncommon back then, but Mrs. Linda insisted. Body wounds heal on their own. Soul wounds need help. Session by session, I unpacked it all. The pain, the betrayal, the guilt I carried. "You didn't cause any of this, Mary," the psychologist repeated. "You were a child. The responsibility was theirs." At first I couldn't believe it. Years of brainwashing don't vanish overnight. But slowly the truth took root. It wasn't my fault. It never was. On my 15th birthday, temporary custody became permanent. Mrs. Linda threw a small party, the first I'd ever had. A simple cake, some friends from school, homemade decorations. But for me, it was everything. And that's how my story transformed. From darkness into light, from silence into voice, from victim into survivor. I know the scars will never fully vanish. They're part of me. But scars are proof that wounds can heal. They don't define who I am. They remind me of what I've overcome. Today, I live a life I once thought impossible. A life where I can laugh without fear, study without shame, and dream without limits. A life where family no longer means pain, but love. If you're listening to me right now, remember this. No matter how deep the darkness, there is always a way out. Sometimes it takes just one hand reaching for you, one voice believing in you, one person standing by your side. For me, that person was Mrs. Linda. For someone else, it could be you. Thank you for walking through my story with me, for carrying the weight of these memories, and for sharing this moment of freedom. I survived, I healed, and now I live. Take care of yourself, hold on to hope, and until next time, goodbye.